morning, good afternoon, good evening, and remember, Context is Everything Media Network founder and CEO John Michael is reading a textbook, cover to cover. Now, today, we are on Chapter 30, Section 3, Fascism in Italy. We're building up to World War II. We did World War I. You can talk about you can look at the cultural effects of the Western culture in the 20s if you listen to yesterday's episode. Today, let's talk about fascism in Italy and do that now. I hated politics and politicians, said Italo Balbo. Like many Italian veterans of World War I, he had come home to a land of economic chaos and political corruption. Italy's constitutional government, he felt, had betrayed the hopes of soldiers, reducing Italy to a shameful peace. Shameful peace? Why? Disgusted and angry, Balbo rallied behind fierce nationalist Benito Mussolini. Mussolini's rise to power in the 1920s served as a model for ambitious strongmen elsewhere in Europe. Rise of Mussolini. Thank you to all 58 subscribers. I appreciate your patronage. It is free, and I appreciate you for clicking the button. And for those of you who have not, that's okay too. Thank you for being here. 1 minute and 42 seconds into this reading. And here is a Rise of Mussolini. In 1919, Italian nationalists were outraged by the Paris peace treaties. As one of the victorious allies, Italy had expected to gain territory in the Adriatic. Instead, these lands became part of the new Yugoslavia. At home, disorders multiplied. Inspired in part by revolutions in Russia, peasants seized land and workers went on strike or seized factories. Amid the chaos, returning veterans faced unemployment. Trade declined and taxes rose. The government split into feuding factions and seemed powerless to the crisis. The government did. A leader emerges. Into this turmoil stepped Benito Mussolini, the son of a socialist blacksmith and teacher. Mussolini had been a socialist in his youth. During the war, however, he rejected socialism for intense nationalism. In 1919, he organized veterans and other discontented Italians into fascist party. They took the name from the Latin fasces, a bundle of sticks wrapped around an axe, a symbol of authority in ancient Rome. So fascist comes from Italy. Fascist comes from Mussolini. I didn't know that. I didn't know that at all. The word fascist comes from Italy. The word fascist comes from Mussolini. With his jutting jaw and slashing phrases, Mussolini was a fiery speaker. He promised an end to corruption and replaced turmoil with order. He also spoke of reviving Roman greatness, pledging to turn the Mediterranean into a Roman lake. Once again, a Roman lake. Seizing power. Mussolini organized his supporters into black-shirted combat squads, rejecting the democratic process in favor of violent action. Black shirts broke up socialist rallies, smashed leftist presses, and attacked farmers' cooperatives. Throughout the intimidation and terror, fascist gangs ousted elected officials in northern Italy. Many Italians accepted these moves because they too had lost faith in constitutional government. In 1922, the fascists made a bid for power. At a rally in Naples, they announced a march on Rome to demand the government make changes. Tens of thousands of fascists swarmed into the capital, fearing civil war. King Victor Emmanuel III asked Mussolini to form a government as prime minister. Without firing a shot, Mussolini thus obtained a legal appointment from the king, undermining constitutional democracy. Yes, I am trying to do an Italian accent. I'm trying to do accents for every nationality, unless I don't know how to do it at all. So I'm trying, whenever I see a quotation, to do an crude Italian accent. It's not going to be good, but I'm practicing. Thank you. Mussolini's Italy. At first, fascists had only a few cabinet posts. In 1925, though, Mussolini had assumed more power and taken the title of Il Duce, the leader. He suppressed rival parties, muzzled the press, rigged elections, and replaced elected officials with fascist supporters. In theory, Italy remained a parliamentary monarchy. In fact, it was a dictatorship upheld by terror. Critics were thrown into prisons, forced into exile, or murdered. Secret police and propaganda bolstered the regime. Here's a little bit of writing that I like. I'm going to write it down on my hand so that I can remember it. I like that they start a paragraph with, in theory, and the next sentence. So in theory, Italy remained parliamentary monarchy. That's sentence 1. Sentence 2, you say, in fact. I think it's a nice 1-2 punch and good for writing. General rhetoric, you know. In theory, in fact. Please follow. Please subscribe. My name is John Michael, Context is Everything Media Network. Thank you. 58 subscribers. I appreciate your patronage. If you're still here and you're not a subscriber, 7 minutes and 7 seconds into this video, I would appreciate your subscription, but it's okay if you don't. I'm almost done with this book. I'll start talking about current topics shortly. Thank you. In theory, Italy remained parliamentary monarchy. In fact, it was a dictatorship upheld by terror. Critics were thrown in prison, forced into exile, or murdered. Secret police and propaganda bolstered the regime. Economic policy. To encourage economic growth and end conflicts between other owners and workers, Mussolini brought the economy under the state control. Unlike socialists, though, he preserved capitalism. Under Mussolini's a corporate state, representatives of businesses, labor, government, and fascist party controlled industry, agriculture, and trade. Although production increased, this success came at an expense of workers. They were forbidden to strike, and their wages lagged. Socialist policies. To fascists, the individual was unimportant except as a member of the state. Men, women, and children were bombarded with slogans glorifying the state and Mussolini. Believe, obey, fight. Loudspeakers blared and posters proclaimed. Men were urged to be ruthless, selfless warriors for the glory of Italy. Women were pushed out of paying jobs. Instead, Mussolini called women to win the battle of motherhood. I don't know what that was. Win the battle of motherhood. Those who bore more than 14 children were given a medal by Il Duce himself. That's a lot of children. Shaping the young was a major fascist goal. Fascist youth groups toughened children and taught them to obey strict military discipline. Boys and girls learned about the glories of ancient Rome. Young fascists marched in torchlight parades, singing patriotic hymns and chanting, Mussolini is always right. By the 1930s, a generation of young soldiers stood ready to back Il Duce's drive to expand Italian power. Now, also, I've heard talk, and you can verify this for yourself if you'd like. I could also do it for you, but I don't really want to do that right now. Italy became a soccer nation, a soccer powerhouse under Il Duce because Mussolini wanted to bolster national pride. And so it was like, well, we better be good at the game of soccer, the game of football. And Italy, not making the World Cup in the past couple of times, but definitely a soccer nation. What is fascism? New heading. What is fascism? Historians still debate the real nature of fascist ideology. Mussolini coined the term, but fascists had no single unifying set of beliefs, as Marxists did. Today, we generally use the term to describe an authoritarian government that is not communist. In the 1920s and 1930s, though, fascism meant different things to different countries. All forms of fascism, however, shared the same basic features. Okay, the basic features of fascism, according to a 2001 world history textbook, are: it was rooted in extreme nationalism. Fascists glorified action, violence, discipline, and above all, blind loyalty to the state. Fascism conceives of the state as an absolute, declared Mussolini. Fascism conceives of the state as an absolute, declared Mussolini, in comparison with which all individuals or groups are relative, only to be conceived of in their relation to the state. I got a little Jamaican there, okay. Fascists were anti-democratic. They rejected the Enlightenment faith in reason and concepts of equality and liberty spread by the French Revolution. To them, democracy led corruption and weakness and put individual or class interests above national goals. Instead, fascists emphasized emotion and the need for citizen to serve the state. Fascists also pursued aggressive foreign expansion, echoing social Darwinist ideas of a survival of the fittest. Fascist leaders glorified warfare as a necessity and a noble struggle for survival. Fascists glorified warfare. Fascists glorified warfare. Fascists glorified warfare. Fascists glorified warfare. What year is it? Compared to communism, fascists were sworn enemies of socialists and communists. While communists had hoped for international change, fascists pursued national goals. Fascists found allies among business leaders, wealthy landowners, and the lower middle class. Communists won support among urban and agricultural workers. Despite such differences, these two ideologies had much in common. Both flourished during economic and hard times by promoting extreme programs for social change. In communist Russia, as well as fascist Italy, dictators imposed totalitarian governments in order to bring about social revolutions. In both, a party elite claimed to rule in the name of the national interest. Totalitarian rule. And Mussolini built the first totalitarian state, which became the model for others. Fascist rule in Italy was not as absolute as those of Stalin in the Soviet Union or Adolf Hitler in Germany. Still, all three governments shared these basic features. 1. Single-party dictatorship. 2. Control of the economy. 3. Use of police spies and terror to enforce the will of the state. 4. Strict censorship and government monopoly of the media. 5. The use of schools and media to indoctrinate and mobilize citizens. 6. Unquestioning obedience to a single leader. Appeal. Given its restrictions and individual freedom, why did fascism appeal to many Italians? First, it promised a strong, stable government and an end to political feuding that had paralyzed the democracy. Mussolini's intense nationalism also struck a chord among most ordinary Italians. He revived national pride, pledging to make the Mediterranean Sea a Roman lake once more. Finally, Mussolini projected a sense of power and confidence at the same time of disorder and despair. At first, Il Duce received good press outside Italy, too. Newspapers in his government Newspapers in Britain, France, and North America applauded the discipline and order of his government. He got the trains running on time, admirers said. Only later, when Mussolini embarked on a course of foreign conquest, did Western democracies protest his actions. A lot of interesting statements in this section that I will return to in a later future series when I'm done reading this book. 3 systems of government competed for influence in post-war Europe. Democracy endured in Britain and France, but faced an uphill struggle and hard times. Communism emerged in Russia and won support elsewhere, but many people saw it as a dangerous threat. In Italy, fascism offered different formula. Its chest-thumping calls for action, national unity, and dedication to the state ignited patriotic feelings. As the Great Depression spread, other nations, most notably Germany, looked to leaders who preached fascist ideology. So, that's that. I'm going to take a quick pause here and notate 2 things that I'm going to read in the future after completing this book in a different segment. So please subscribe if you haven't done so already. I thank you, all 58 subscribers who have subscribed, but if it's 16 minutes and 58 seconds in and you still haven't subscribed, please consider it. Thank you. God bless. Good day.